Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about one of the most impactful changes in the last patch of Age of Empires 2, which is the fact that Ballistics is now affecting Scorpion projectiles. This is a huge change and one that really shakes Age of Empires 2 and the dynamics of Scorpions and their place in the meta. And at first I had mixed opinions about it and I really wasn't sure how this will actually impact the meta and how popular it would be amongst players. But after a couple weeks of testing, this is what I found. And honestly, the results of what I've been finding in my road to 3k, a lot of 1v1 Arabia games, is quite interesting and it's different than my initial expectations from this change. Again, a change like this is very hard to judge based on just like the theory of it. In practice, you get a lot more information, a lot more of an idea of how good ballistic scorpions are, and I'm going to be sharing these findings with you guys today. So starting off with the good things about ballistic scorpions, and to be honest with you, I am quite impressed by how they've been performing. Now, number one, the scorpion projectiles are actually harder to dodge than I thought in Castle Age. This is the first idea I want to tackle because, as you guys know, pro players and high level players in general have now found a way to dodge ballistic shots. Like in general, this is a thing that's been very popular in the last 3-4 years. Before it got discovered around like 5 years ago or something like that, where players are now able to dodge ballistics. This is a thing that's been going around, and this is no different to scorpions. You could actually dodge a ballistic scorpion. All you have to do is move after the scorpion shoots in a different direction than where you're moving initially, and then you'll be able to dodge the shots. However, it's a lot harder to dodge the projectiles using the same method when there's multiple scorpions on the field. The scorpion projectile actually moves quite fast, and so if there's multiple projectiles shooting at you at the same time, dodging them, even with this technique of dodging ballistics, is not an easy task. It's actually very complicated, and because of the pass-through damage of the scorpion, even if you dodge a little bit, you'll probably still get hit on the side and you'll still take some damage. So dodging a clean, no damage taken ballistic scorpion bolt is going to be very difficult. It's not an easy thing to do consistently, and so dodging the scorpion ballistic projectile is not something that you can rely on with your army, be it CA, knights, or crossbows. And so therefore, the scorpions are naturally just getting more value with ballistics. Keep in mind, without ballistics, it's very easy to dodge scorpion shots. All you have to do is literally move perpendicular to them, and then you're completely fine. You just have to create that 90-degree angle where you're walking one side, and you kind of create that 90 angle from the scorpion to your army, and then just walk either side to side, and you'll be completely fine. In this setup, with no ballistics, they can basically never hit you. Maybe they scrape the edge of your army, but that's about it. Otherwise, they'll just never hit you. But with ballistics, obviously they can now land some shots if you're moving. So what this means is that scorpions just now have to be respected a lot more than they did before. Like beforehand, if you see a scorpion, you can basically 100% know how to counterplay it. You know exactly how to move to take 0 damage from it. You can just collapse on it and just shoot, split, shoot, finish it off. If there's multiple scorpions, you can easily avoid their fire. You can even run around them and just try to like get some rating damage done because they're just not going to hit you, and it's like super easy to play against. But now that they have the ballistics and it's really quite difficult to dodge that bolt, you can't just run through scorpions anymore. You can't just run around scorpions anymore. You have to really respect them. When they're on the field, you have to find a counter to them, or you have to really play in a different side of the map and take advantage of their lack of mobility. But you can't just ignore them like you did before. I've also noticed that the scorpions with ballistics are incredibly solid against CA and mass. In fact, they're really good against any unit in mass because if there's a mass of units, scorpions have always been good because you're always going to land your shot. But now with ballistics, you can land your shots in the middle of these armies. Like as they're moving, you can shoot your ballistic scorpions in the middle of the armies and just get massive shots on these big masses of units. And the scorpions can act as like mangonels if you have like 5-6 of them, because 5-6 scorpions one shot, you're dealing like 50 to 60 damage, factoring in their pierce armor if they have any, concentrated on a few units with pass-through damage. This is literally a mangonel shot with ballistics once you have a few of these going. And so against masses of units, scorpions are now insanely solid. And so the only way to counterplay them is to basically just avoid them or get like mangonels on the field to counter them, or send in cav one by one or few by few to try to snipe the scorpions before sending in your main army. If your main army comes in contact with like 6 to 10 scorpions, you're gonna get melted. Even if you have like cav archers that are very tanky, you will get melted. And so scorpions are now a much better answer to cav archers, which could put into question this cav archer meta that we've been developing. So if you guys have been following my meta shift videos, which in my opinion are the most interesting ones that I make, you'll notice that CA have been performing very well recently, but this scorpion with ballistic tech that's just been coming into the game can actually keep the cav archers, kind of keep them in check and kind of keep them at bay a little bit more, and might even shift into more of a light cav meta, or maybe even more of a archer skirm meta with ballistics. It could actually bring that right back into things, which is quite cool, to be honest. We'll see how that shift will play out, but for now I can just say that the Scorpion is much better against CA and much better when the CA are masked than it was before. It's also very solid against Expo like it always was, and also this is maybe a little bit surprising. I would even argue that the Scorpion is really good against Knights and Light Cav. And it might sound strange, but before, Knights and Light Cav basically never got hit by Scorpions, unless they were running straight at the Scorpions, but in that case, usually you kill them. Now, you have two choices. If you run at the Scorpions and you clear them out, sure, it's going to feel the same as before. But if you're unsure if you can kill the Scorpions, you don't know if he's got other army, if you want to run in to find out, you can run in to find out and take massive damage, realize you can't take the fight and have to run back, and as you run back, you're still going to be getting caught by the ballistic Scorpion shots. This is completely different to how this exact situation would play out before. So Scorpions are now really hard to take out, even if you have cav. And this is the scary part about ballistic Scorpions and Castle Age. We haven't even talked about Imperial Age yet. And the last thing I want to talk about as far as a pro for the Scorpions is that now you can't run into a base that has Scorpions with ballistics. Number one, the TCs have ballistics, which is already hard to deal with. And number two, if they've got Scorpions with ballistics, if you run into the base and you kind of get trapped, the Scorpions have a really high damage output. So if you're forced to run out through the Scorpions and through a town center, even cav, even Knights and Light Cav will get absolutely melted by this amount of damage output. And so running into a base that has ballistic Scorpions on defense is not going to be easy and not going to be a wise choice in most cases. So my solution to this Scorpion with ballistics setup, like the response rather from the guy with army, is to number one, play around the Scorpions. This is always the counter to any immobile siege, is to raid around them. If they're on defense, then you just go for the relics on the map and you control the map. If they're on offense, you cut off reinforcements, prevent more Scorpions from joining that army, and counterattack and raid their base, and then use defensive units like castles, guard towers, or mangonels to deal with the Scorpion deathball coming forward. That's how you deal with Scorpions. That's how you've always dealt with Scorpions, but now you kind of have to do that because fighting the Scorpions head on is much harder. I've also noticed that people are using mangonels a lot more often as a response to Scorpions. Mangonels have also always been good against Scorpions, but now it's probably your best option because the relationship between mangonels and Scorpions hasn't changed, even with Scorpions getting ballistics. So mangonels are still performing just as well, and it's probably one of your best options now that regular units are having a lot of trouble against the Scorpions. So that's basically been the main response. Now let's talk about some downsides of these Scorpions from what I've realized. So there are a few players that are forcing them a little bit too much in Castle Age, and I think that is incorrect. That is wrong, because if you force Scorpions, like, okay, like ballistic Scorpions are insane, I'm gonna go for them every game, and you just like force the Siege Workshop, University, Ballistics, massive few Scorpions, that is like 1,000 to 1,500 res. That's a lot of resources in the in the wood and gold department, and that's not something that you can justify easily. So my take is that going for Scorpions for the sake of going for them and like thinking that they're amazing, just always going for them, is probably the wrong call, because they have weaknesses still because they're an immobile siege unit, and they're not that good against everything. So if you just go for them and your opponent just pure booms at home or plays with very little army, your Scorpions can't punish a boom as well as you think. They're only good against other units. So if your opponent isn't actually active with army on the map, going for Scorpions and just randomly forcing them is probably not the right call. Sure, it could lead to some death balls like Scorpion, Knight, Ram, sure, but it's very expensive to set up the ballistic Scorpions. So if you go for them and it's not the right situation, you can put yourself very far behind and you can just get completely outscaled. So although I think it's a fantastic unit and it's quite solid and must be respected now, it still has its weaknesses and it's very expensive to get into. The best setup for ballistic Scorpions, to be honest with you, is when you already need ballistics for your crossbows and your skirms, and then you just add in a few Scorpions. This is like the best setup for them that I've found, because this means that you don't need to invest any extra for the ballistic, you already have it, and then the Scorpions can just get extra value and are harder to play against than they were before. And this situation with range units versus range units is exactly where Scorpions shine. In fact, the only downside of the situation is that mangonels are just going to counter the range units and the Scorpions, so you just have to be careful and balance out the ratio of mangonels and Scorpions for the best results. Okay, that's Castle Age Scorpions out of the way. Let's quickly talk about Imperial Age Scorps, because this is where things get a little crazy. In my opinion, the heavy Scorpions now are a really solid option in late game. They are basically, with Siege Engineers, an 8 range unit that has 16 plus 1 attack. That is ridiculous. If you compare that to an Arbalest that has 6 plus 4 attack with the same range of 8, assuming of course you have Racer on Arbalest and Siege Engineers for Scorpions, you have 8 range on both, but one has 7 17 damage and pass through, and the other has 10 damage, no pass through. Now, obviously, Arbalests have faster movement speed, they're cheaper, so they have other things going for them. It's not like the Scorpion is just an Arbalest but better. However, the Scorpion has a lot of things over the Arbalest: higher damage outputs, the pass through damage that can be absolutely devastating, and in my opinion, an army of Scorpions can really feel like a death ball at the moment, because before the Ballistics, Hussars can run easily at the Scorpions. You can kind of like dodge with a few, spread them out, and just kind of collapse on the Scorpions. But now with Ballistics, the Hussars are getting consistently more damage dealt to them, and I feel like they're just not closing the gap in time to clear out the Scorpions. I genuinely believe that the Scorpions are doing very well against this fast-moving cavalry compared to before, and it's just not a trivial task to deal with Scorpions. So Scorpions are now a really solid backline unit, and it gets really crazy, like potentially broken with the good Scorpion civs like Khmer, Mongols, Celts, Ethiopians. I think Khmer seems to be the best so far, but those 4 civs are like absolutely ridiculous late game with Scorpions. I didn't include Chinese because Chinese are lacking siege engineers, which I think is kind of crucial. Even though the Chinese with the extra damage, their Scorpions are definitely solid in their own right. So that's kind of what I feel about the heavy Scorpion right now. Super solid option, potentially broken with those like 4 civs that get extra crazy bonuses. Ironically, Roman Scorpions are actually maybe like the least threatening at the moment. Like they're still good, but they're probably like less good than the other options, which is funny. They went from like one of the best in late game with very special Ballistics. Now Romans are kind of forgettable, which is a shame, but you know, it is what it is. Other civs now gets a little bit crazier bonuses for their Scorpions, and it's really just something to watch out for. Heavy Scorpions are now pretty much only counterable by the same principles we used in Castle Age. Either you go for counter units, like in Imperial Age you have Bombard Cannon. You can even use Trebs to some degree, just try to hit them from long range. Siege Onagers, hit them from long range and just break the Scorpions that way. Or you just raid away from them. If they're attacking you through the center, raid them on the sides. And that's probably the best way to fight against Scorpion comps now, because fighting them head on feels really hard. It's still possible, but it feels really hard. My take, secret tech at the end of the video here, is that to fight against Ballistic Scorpions, what you should do is use a group of like 3-4 Hussar, send them in first, and then use them to dodge Ballistics. Spam them back and forth to bait the Scorpion fire, and then send in your 30 Hussar. If you do this properly and do it fast, like send in the 3 and then like literally like 2 seconds later send in the 20-30 Hussar, you can bait out like the first 2 to 3 volleys of the Scorpion shots before your opponent realizes what's happening, and you can get a really good engagement against them. This is probably the best way to engage onto Scorpions with Hussar and with cavalry. It gets really tricky though when it gets to heavy Scorpion plus Halb. I don't know if there's any counter to that besides Bombard Cannon and Siege Onager, but honestly, maybe we just have to rely on those heavy long-range siege to counter Scorpions. Maybe Scorpions are just a really solid option that is worth respecting now in late game. I want to quickly talk about the fact that Scorpions will probably not be that good in BF 4v4 and even in Arabia 4v4, because Bombard Cannon and Siege Onagers are much stronger in those game modes than they are in 1v1 Arabia. So I really think that the new Scorpion change will help the most in 1v1 Arabia and not so much in the 4v4, especially on Arena and Black Forest, where Siege Onager and Bombard Cannon are already very popular, because those are the 2 main counters to Ballistics, or to Scorpions in general. All right, that's gonna do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what your thoughts have been with the new Ballistic Scorpions. Have you guys tried out the Ballista Elephants as well? I have, and they're absolutely amazing. In my opinion, the change is actually very fun and very welcome for now. If it gets to be a little bit broken, what you could do to tune it down is actually just nerf the Scorpion itself a little bit, take some of that HP back, because they've been getting buffed with other things like HP and all that. You can make the upgrade a bit more expensive. You know, you can do other things to keep Ballistic Scorpions in the game and still keep it balanced. If it turns out to be too broken, it's still way too early to test, and I'm not making this video to call for any nerfs or anything like that. But let me know your thoughts and your experience with the Ballistic Scorpion so far. Do you like it? Do you not like it? You know, just give me your thoughts. I read your comments. I love doing it, in fact. And that's going to be it for the video. If you guys want more content from me, check out my Patreon to get better and to hit 3K elo like me soon. Not yet, but soon. For all the exclusive guides and content, of course, on Patreon, the builders, all the good stuff. And also check out my Twitch live stream. Links to both in the description below. Definitely check those out. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.